And we are joined here today by Jiho, co-founder and chief growth officer at Sky Mavis, the creators of Axie Infinity and the Ronin ecosystem. Jiho, sir, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Excited to be here. I believe this is your first episode, so I will be sure to recommend. And yeah, really excited to be here. Always respect both of your takes on the space. So excited to chat gaming, Web3 gaming, different models, the future. Let's get into it.
What are you playing? What games are you on at the moment?
So before I came to Asia, I was playing Season of Blood in D4. Actually, I'm trying to figure out how to make the game better. I'm interested in how they live ops and course correct the game. And I have a theory that eventually part of the way that they fix itemization for D4 is by like creating some sort of a let's say it doesn't have to be like real money auction house system like they had with D3 for a bit, but it could be like some sort of a currency, right? Like the way that they have a currency for WoW, or maybe something that's a little bit more towards Robux. But I think like the ancestral uniques could be good for some sort of a tokenization or some sort of a trading system. I think like one of the big complaints is that like those things are super rare and hard to get, and like and they're basically they're account bound, right? So yeah, I've been playing that. I'm trying out a Warcraft Rumble, and yeah, so I'm talking about like trad games right now. Obviously, I play Axie Origins basically every day to avoid decay. Um, and I also am playing Pixels, right? So Pixels is the latest game that we've onboarded and launched on Ronin, and it's starting to make a splash. I believe DAU just hit 50K yesterday, so exciting.
What class did you pick in D4? I'm a big druid guy myself.
Yeah, I play Pulverized Bear, bro. That's why, and the Pulverized Bear is the only class. It's the correct build to play in D4, and that was why everyone quit, like when they nerfed it, and now it's back. So the game is fun again.
And are you a Path of Exile fan as well? Or are you like hardcore Blizzard only ARPGs?
Yeah, I'm actually a Blizzard fanboy, to be honest. Like growing up, like I played the first thing I ever did on the internet was play StarCraft. I played D2, so I played Werebear in D2. Actually, I played like a
Okay.
Maul, Fire Claws, Phase Blade, 4 frames per second attack. Like I used to duel. I used to be one of the top Druid duelers as an 11-year-old, actually on US East. Um, so yeah, I was like, I was trading forum gold anyway. So I'm like a pretty like big Druid, Blizzard fanboy. I had no, none of my friends got me into Path of Exile, or I've heard great things about it. I'll probably just wait until Path of Exile 2 comes out to dive in.
How do you think Blizzard's handling the Warcraft IP, specifically with the recent like Rumble game?
And Rumble is, dude, to be honest, like the it's a very heavy game on mobile, and like being sometimes in Vietnam, it's like, yeah, I'm having issues. I'm actually having issues like playing it mechanically, right, or even logging in. So that's one thing, right, is that there's like a certain quality bar that is expected of Blizzard, and then that might cause issues, I guess, on mobile devices. So that's one of the things that I noticed. I'm just using an iPhone. I think it's like not the latest iPhone, but the last iPhone, and it's hard for me to play. So.
I think it would be nice to kind of acknowledge the recent PAMP in on-chain metrics that Ronin is enjoying. You mentioned previously that like games like Pixels have just reached daily active wallets of around like 50K. I know that a couple days ago, on-chain wallet interactions reached like I think it was 35K for Ronin as like the entire ecosystem, and that has put you now in a somewhat unique position in Web3 where you can offer teams a pool of wallets or users that are already gaming inclined. What would you say are some of the key considerations for teams that in general are moving into Web3 and hope to have like a successful beta and then later like global launch? And what role does an ecosystem like Ronin play in that?
Yeah, definitely. So we're starting to see an increase in the quality of the experiences that are starting to integrate Web3. I think that was always expected, right? And I think what these games and these teams are looking for is advisory and amplification, right? Advisory on the, blockchain tech, on the tokenomics and the Web3 mechanisms. And then, okay, right, nobody knows really what the scalable Web3 publishing model really, really is at this moment. But what we're seeing with exact cases like Pixels is that, right, if you come with an immersive enough game, and some interesting Web3 mechanics, right? So Pixel is also like really playing into this play to mint mechanism, right? If you have that as a base, then our community will come in and act as an accelerant, or basically pour some oil on this ember or this flame. So that was what we're seeing. I think the teams that do well on Ronin, they're scrappy, they're experimental, they're lean, they're able to figure out some interesting mechanism design when it comes to incentivized engagement. But of course, they're not solely reliant on that, right? It needs to be, the full package where you have an interesting IP, you have an immersive game loop or game loops, and then the Web3 mechanics are the thing that kind of juices it and makes it unique, and leans into a bit of that speculation and degen culture, right? Because it's not that we're not having that type of degen culture on Ronin. It's just that it's a unique take on it because it's gaming centric, I would say, right? And I think it's fair to say that and lean into that a bit, because that's what really acts as the onboarding magnet for Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think it's like unfair to say that gaming shouldn't be able to also use that as a part of our carrot.
And like, what would you say to teams that maybe are coming from Web 2 backgrounds, traditional backgrounds, and are now taking a more sort of community first Web 3 approach pre launch to how they build out that community and prepare for like selling assets or the actual game launch itself? What would you say is the value in having that first cohort, that golden cohort of like a couple thousand players, be Web3 native, as opposed to the traditional group of like, normies that are just helping with beta testing or QA?
So what you need, right, is like these games are very cultural, and you're looking to create a movement. It's almost, I think about it more as like almost a grassroots political campaign, right? Where you're looking for canvassers. I used to actually do more like advising in politics, and it was like, okay, how do you basically get all of these volunteers that are, really feeling a sense of ownership within the campaign? And then I think like obviously the actual tokens and the NFTs that you're able to distribute to the early cohorts, right? That kicks it up to another notch where they are really owners in this campaign, right? So yeah, and I think that some of these Web2 gaming studios that are coming in, they're paying homage to these community based bootstrapping mechanisms. I think that's wise of them. um, you're gonna want to you know work with people who have expertise in that, right? Otherwise you're you know you may come off as inauthentic, right? So you want to find people who authentically understand that strategy and can execute it. So yeah, I think I saw Zynga right there. Seems like they're doing relatively well, and they have this kind of hybrid team, right, where they're working with and have hired some, I would say like Web3 gaming um, degens almost, right, like to help on the community side of things.
Do you think there's a particular advantage in having the first cohort of players be Web3 native and then scale into Web 2?
I think so, because that's how you build startups, right? So when I think about this, I think Sky Mavis, we were not none of us have built a successful gaming company before, but some of us on the founding team have built successful startups before. And when I was trying to figure out how to do growth for Axie, I didn't look at like how to do user acquisition for a game. I looked at Paul Graham's articles on how to get the first 1,000 users for your startup. And I think that that's kind of like the line of logic that helped us in the beginning. I think that having your first golden cohort be Web3 native, it basically expands your team, right? You're a small team. You're very you're lean, you're scrappy, you're experimental. You don't have a ton of budget to spend on marketing, right? So it's like you're kind of reliant on having a high K factor and to basically onboard those initial gamers, right? Obviously, something like Ronin is able to help. I think get initial users, right? I think that's part of the thing. But you're looking for, I think, users that have a super high K factor, and in order for you to have a high K factor to these NFT games, the users need to understand like the value proposition and the benefits of the technology, so that they can properly like message and onboard. Web3 gaming has a very manual onboarding process. People think that will eventually stop. I'm interested in figuring out a way to win, even if that is always the case. And League of Legends has a very manual onboarding process, and it's still super freaking huge, right? Like, I believe that it's impossible to start playing League unless you have a friend teach you how to play League, for example. So what if it's impossible to get into Web3 gaming if a friend doesn't help you get into Web3 gaming? That wouldn't be, to me, totally out of the question.
So what sort of things are you guys exploring to try to help with like the Fatui onboarding process, whether it's for Ronin, the platform, for games on Ronin? Like, what are some of the things you guys are exploring there?
There's a lot. So there's so many different angles to tackle it from. There's at the wallet level, right? Do we go with like social login and MPC? And that basically allows you to abstract away a lot of the complexities, right? That may be even like more of a traditional mid-curve approach, to be honest, but then it still needs to be like simplified. I don't think that's all of it. And there's free NFTs, giving out free NFTs as onboarding incentives. We did that with the CyberKongs when they came onto Ronin. We're like, hey, if you own a CyberKongs, you're going to get a free team of Axies, fall in love with the universe. We saw that we actually had positive LTV on those players within 1 month, right? So it's like, okay, imagine what would happen if they kept playing Axie for years. So yeah, free NFTs. I was the first to do that. Actually, I gave out free Axies to CryptoKitties players, to Decentraland landholders, all back in 2018, and that was like, in my opinion, the first Web3 gaming UA, right, where you have basically a cost per acquisition as well as the ability to kind of track and measure LTV. And we have a gifting portal to assist with campaigns like that now, actually, where you can basically just send someone a link to an NFT and they'll click a button, and as long as they have the Ronin wallet downloaded, and that NFT will go into their wallet. If they don't have a Ronin wallet, there's just a button to download the Ronin wallet, right? So imagine like us giving out merch or selling merch with QR codes that have, basically just links, or QR codes that are links to Axies or the Ronin wallet download. Boom, right? We're starting to have some new onboarding pathways. In terms of Axie Infinity Origins, we've made it so that you can fall in love with the universe and the IP by playing for free with some of the starter Axies or mascot Axies that are owned by us that we allow people to play with. So yeah, that's been a lot of the focus around first time user experience with Origins, right? Our flagship card battler was like, okay, can we get people hooked and interested without them having an NFT? And then it's like, yeah, how do we have like basically an awareness and soft activation before like hard activation, right? Because I think always part of the issue with NFTs is like you're going from awareness to like hard activation without enough steps in between. Email drip campaigns. And that was something that worked a ton for us in the last bull market. I think we had like hundreds of millions of views on those emails, and from the SendGrid account, where basically if you made an account at our marketplace, you needed to register with an email. I think that was something that people might really sleep on in Web3 is like get people's emails somehow. They we have millions of emails, so that they would make an account on our marketplace, and then boom, day one you're getting how to play Axie, how to get your first Axies. Day two, it's like, oh, are you struggling? Here are some links to YouTubers that'll teach you how to play. Day three, oh, are you having fun? Did you know that you can actually get some rare Axies, some collectible Axies? Day four, have you heard of the Axis token? This is the first token that allows the game that loves a game, that allows the community that loves a game to actually own it. And right, so then it's like you're basically sending a drip campaign that guides people down the funnel. Step 5 is like, oh, did you know that Axie will not succeed if we don't all like help it grow together? Therefore, like we need you to make content, and we send them like the content creator kit. And anyways, so these are all the things that we think about when it comes to onboarding. My team right now is actually doing an audit of all the onboarding pathways and flows into Ronin. It also comes with like fiat and on ramps and off ramps, the Ronin bridge, and all that needs to be like constantly optimized and like seen through fresh eyes. Right?
So it sounds like a lot of the onboarding kind of starts, or at least it filters or funnels through kind of Axie, the Axie IP, right? But as you guys are kind of growing that, that Rolodex, right? Now you have Pixels, you've got a lot of other experiences on the platform, first party, second party, third party. Like, do you think there will be a point where you're no longer kind of funneling people in through Axie? Like, do you think, like if you're going back to the League of Legends example, right? Like one of the issues with League of Legends is it's just so unbelievably cumbersome to understand all the mechanics because that game is so deep, right? I'm not saying Axie is deep, but there might be a game that's much easier, much lighter touch to actually get into that Ronin ecosystem. So is that like something that you're thinking about? I mean, there could even be like a choose your own adventure, right? Like I know when you play like Wild Rift, right? It's like one of the things that helps, I think, with the onboarding, at least compared to back in the day when I played League on PC, is like you get to pick the types of characters that you'll get for free. So it's like, hey, if you're drawn to a marksman, right? I'll explain to you through that onboarding experience, hey, here are the types of characters you might want to use. So kind of filtering by player archetype to try to, dampen some of the friction. Like, do you think about that in terms of the types of games that you'll funnel people in through? Curious how you guys are thinking about that.
It's really relevant, right? Because first of all, this is the first week ever that the number one most played game on Ronin is not an Axie game, right? So this is a momentous week. And so it seems like, for a lot of these people that are playing are not actually from the Ronin community or the pre-existing Axie and Ronin community. And a lot of them have been interested in Ronin, maybe as token holders or, watching from the sidelines, watching our progress, watching Pixel's progress, and finally saw this as a moment to get in. So that would be amazing to me if we have other IPs and games that can act as onboarding streams. That's going to help Axie as well. We also think about that within the Axie universe. Right now, we use Origins as the entry point into the Axie universe, but it's a card game. Is a card game really the best first experience? Card games can be complicated and off-putting to a lot of people. And so within the Axie universe, we actually have hundreds of games now. And I think Sky Mavis has built 5 or 6 of them. And community members have built 90 plus. We just had the Axie Game Jam, right? Where in just a couple of weeks, we had basically 96 submissions of mini games built by the community. And some of those, some of these things might be better first impressions to the Axie universe than what is currently being used. And that's something to definitely assess and to gather data on.
So I think a lot of this is like, hey, Ronin looks one way today, right? But you're kind of building what the future of either game publishing, Web3 game publishing, whatever you want to call it. So kind of curious, like, what do you think kind of the future of like a Web3 publisher model looks like? Whether that's kind of how you kind of characterize Ronin or if you characterize it as a platform for games. Just kind of curious, like where you see that kind of going.
The questions that I think lead to this answer are, how do you leverage the community through incentivized actions to help promote the games that are coming onto the platform. Right? That's why something like Moku, I think, is very powerful for the Ronin ecosystem. Moku is only powerful because we have a pre-existing community that we can basically then like coordinate in different ways to help amplify the game launch, right? Through basically stocking it with NFTs and tokens, and right, and creating like some gotcha mechanism that basically allows for a very low cost per coordinated action when these games are launching. The second thing is maybe it plays into interoperability a bit, right? And it's like, oh, vertical interoperability, which is like basically how do all of the games within the publishing ecosystem, how do they cross pollinate uh, and help each other evolve and help each other reach new audiences? And that's another part of it, right? And it's like even when Genkai and Cybercoms came on to Ronin, right? Ronin, we did a lot of like cross pollination with the Axie community, and likewise with Pixels is like actually a great example, right? One of the interesting things about Pixels is that they've tried this UA strategy where they will give utility to a bunch of useless PFP collections, and then it's like, oh, these abandoned PFP bag holders are now like part of their community, right? It's not that they're necessarily always trying to help, right? This is even can be seen as like an attack on these other projects in some ways, right? Where you're basically giving utility to an NFT because you want that person in your community, not the community that NFT holder currently belongs to, right? That's kind of like when I was giving out Axies to CryptoKitties players and Axies to Decentraland landholders. I'm not trying to help those projects. I'm trying to take their users, right? I think within the Ronin ecosystem, it can be like really collaborative as well, right? Where you have, right, you know, you can think of it as in the Blizzard. It's kind of similar, right, to the Blizzard Nintendo model, right, where you have these like, you know, IPs that are boosting each other and acting as top of funnel sometimes and down funnel in other times, right?
So are you guys constantly thinking about kind of you alluded to this earlier, but like the cross pollination of the IP? So like is the idea, hey, when we're bringing Pixels on board, like you're already kind of spitballing some ideas of, hey, how do we get Axie involved? How do we get potentially like the Genkai kind of IP involved? Or is that kind of in after the fact sort of like analysis? Is it like, hey, there's a lot that we like about Pixels. We're looking for kind of a new game, something that's sufficiently differentiated, but has a strong community. But going to your kind of like political activation sort of analogy, you're like, hey, where are the activated stakeholders that we think can plug into our community? And then how do we kind of collectively coordinate those stakeholders and make them a part of, the community that we have today?
So I think we're definitely thinking about it more so on the go to market and the launch coordination, right? And we're still learning, right? It's like, okay, like the hypothesis on Pixels seems to have been correct, right? It's like you find something that has that's putting up good numbers and that seems like it has this really interesting community, and then it's like, boom, if you add on the Ronin and Axie community on top of that, then you get like exponential growth. And so yeah, I think it's it's right, like it's almost like values based recruiting for a chain. Right? Like when I build my team, I build with the values and the attitude at the core. And what if we built a gaming chain that also, right, was a bit more selective and curated and is using like shared values and yeah, basically attitude as a way to figure out like who would be a good fit, right? Is like when we met Pixels, it was like, okay, wow, these guys are scrappy, they're experimental, they're lean, they're not arrogant, and they don't necessarily believe that there is a well-defined playbook, and so they're going to be, they're probably going to be the types of builders that go well with our community, right? And that feeling, I think, was to me like a precursor, harbinger to the current traction.
I'm curious when it comes to these gaming ecosystems, we've seen a number of them attempt to onboard as many games as possible, at least in the initial stages. and then slowly over time they start to refine their quality assessment process. Um, how do you combat the risk of that number of new games outpacing the number of new players?
Well, I think we're the only team that I think that's thinking about this in some way, right? Where we're more selective, at least, about which games we're choosing to quote unquote publish, right? Where these other ecosystems, I would say, right, they're taking like a spray and pray approach, and there's no way for them to coordinate the attention of the community onto single projects at a time. Definitely it's like becoming a thing, especially recently. It's like, wow, there's so much happening in the Ronin ecosystem that it's hard to keep up. And I think that this is going to be a huge market, though. Like, that really really is super super small, and it really is a core group of missionaries, less than 1 million people. I think the entire NFT gaming space right now, Web3 gaming, is maybe 300,000 to 400,000 people that are actually using these products, and I think 60 or 70% of them are on Ronin. I was saying that even before Pixels. I think we're still right around that ballpark, maybe higher. But yeah, I do believe that demand and the number of gamers can rapidly outpace the number of quality games, especially as new models are figured out, new and the playbook gets expanded, and of course, right, we're now like, you know, the macro is important, right? We're in a, I would say this. I was talking to Alex, right, from Nansen about this, or he commented on something that I put out the other day, right? It's like, what if we're in a cyclical industry, right, with a super long term, where we're on like a 4 year cycle, right, where I don't think it'll always be like that, but that's kind of the reality that we're in right now. And, it seems like things are starting to percolate. And I think that there will be a bunch of like innovation and new mechanics that are unleashed and unlocked as the incentive to innovate increases over the next 18 to 24 months.
I kind of want to go back to your earlier point about like kind of like canvassing and like activating these early members of the community, because I feel like that's like the hardest part for a lot of the startups building in the space, right? It's like, hey, how do you get
It's the
someone to
hardest
care?
part of building a startup, period. It's literally the hardest part about building. I'm the guy who can help get the first 1,000 users. Who knows? I might not be the person to get 1 billion users. But that, I feel like, is I think that's like the hardest part of building a startup, is because you need to have no shame. You have to be afraid of, like, you cannot be afraid of rejection. You literally have to manually recruit people. I used to be a recruiter, so my background, like in terms of the things that I did before Axie and NFTs, I was a recruiter. I recruited quants for hedge funds, and so you're dealing with very smart people who are going to be rude to you and like say, "Fuck no, I don't want to." Or you work at a hedge fund. Usually, it's like a rocket scientist or something like that who doesn't want to work at a hedge fund. Those are the type of people that I was dealing with, and then. Yeah, I was doing some political stuff. So yeah, really, like, recruiting your first 1,000 users is super hard. But yeah, and it took us more than a year to get that for Axie, right? So imagine the benefit of being able to come onto Ronin and have a bit of that for you, right? That was also why we called it a scholarship, because in recruiting, you're taught to frame something as going to be good for their career. So I was like, okay, like, Axie, right now, there's literally not much way to make money. This is 2018. No, you cannot really make money in a very simple or predictable way. And the game is very basic. It was literally an auto battler. You can check YouTube to see like what Axie looked like in 2018. So it's like, but like the most value that I've gotten, from being in the space for 9 months at the time, was like, I learned about crypto. I learned about blockchain. I was, starting to learn about DeFi at this time. I think it was maybe a month before Uniswap was released that I coined this term, right? So I was like, what if we called the free Axies a scholarship, right? People would then understand that it's like an educational opportunity that's good for their career, right? So then that made it a lot easier to get people to try it out.
Maybe shifting away from the IP side of things, like, Could you just kind of talk a little bit about like, hey, not the end state of Ronin, but what do you want Ronin as a platform to look like? Let's say this time next year, right? You guys have a wallet. You've already come out and said, hey, we appreciate creators. We're gonna, make sure that there's royalties. You're obviously gonna keep building out the gaming catalog and working on kind of that onboarding experience. But like, what are kind of the next steps for the platform, right? How do you grow at that side of things? On that side of things.
How do we scale the ability to launch these games? Do we really have a full suite of tools for them to like seamlessly launch? Can a bunch of games be launching at the same time? These are some of the things that I think we need to really hammer down maybe in the next year. And I think we feel confident about it, but I think we need to prove it. And so that's what I think really excited about is like, okay, for example, the launchpad is very basic right now, right? The Mavis Market launchpad feature that we tested out with Genkai, and what are the list of features that are needed for that, and for the different games that are coming out, right? Some of them might want different mechanisms of releasing NFTs. How templated should we be with that versus flexible and almost like white glove? So yeah, I think NFT launchpad, ERC20 token launchpad for gaming tokens, and I think because that's a lot of that is the fuel to the fire, and yeah, upgrading the wallet. We have social login, but it's still a little bit clunky. It's not fully amazing. So I think like wallet upgrades that harness MPC and like user experience innovations that are happening in that space, and yeah, like continuing to iterate, to be honest, on this amplification and publishing model, trying some more like what does Web3 paid acquisition look like? And I don't know, like maybe it's like, hey, like some of the biggest streamers in the world are start to become open-minded, and they might be a good fit for different brands or IPs that are on Ronin, right? It's like that would be an unlock. I mean, to be honest, at a certain point, the incentive and the value proposition of the space at different market caps becomes attractive enough so that one of them should be able to understand that it could be a major career move to be the mainstream streamer that hops into Web3 gaming. And I think that will start to happen, right? So it's like can we do business model, to be honest, just business model and monetization innovations, right? One of the issues that's the case with Web3 UA, right, is even if you're able to get like very good CPIs, and it's like, how do you basically justify the LTVs when you're spending fiat on ads, but then people are coming into the ecosystem and then like buying from the secondary market, right? Like that doesn't that's not going to work. So then it's like, okay, how do you basically create things that are kind of like IAPs or IAP models that are still within the ethos of Web3? Does that mean that, hey, like you're sending a portion of IAPs to the treasury to incentivize, to align incentives with the Web3 audience and your token holders? That's a question that I think we can also answer. So yeah, when we're talking about the Web3 publishing model, like you can, and I'm probably one of the biggest proponents externally and internally that yeah, it's going to be totally different than Web2 publishing, and that's a good thing, because if it was exactly the same as Web2 publishing, then MiHoYo can come in and like steal all our money, right? So this is probably a good thing that it's not going to be exactly like that. But there will still, I think, be paid acquisition opportunities, and it may require some rewiring of the monetization mechanisms, and then it's like, okay, how do you make sure that you're doing that while still adhering to the ethos of the space?
And that about wraps it up for this episode of the Doubl3Tap podcast. Thank you very much for your time, Jiho. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Awesome. Nah, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for giving me the honor of being the first guest. And yeah, let's run it back.
The content of this video is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice. The views shared by Alex and I are our own, and we may hold investments in some of the companies or digital assets featured in the video.